Ojo was the talk of the village of Umoma, tall, dark, and handsome. With a smile that could melt even the sternest hearts, he was a master of charm. His quick wit and sweet tongue had won over countless women, young and old, single and married alike. What made him even more intriguing was his unusual profession. Ojo was a nail artist. His steady hands and creative designs brought women from far and wide to his small shop, which was always filled with laughter and gossip. But behind his charming exterior lay a fickle heart, and his reputation for leaving a trail of broken hearts was legendary. Omarachi, on the other hand, was the embodiment of innocence and grace. A beautiful girl with skin like polished ebony and eyes that sparkled with hope, she was in her final year of secondary school. Growing up in a strict Christian home, she was known for her modesty and discipline. Her father, Deacon Obina, was a pillar of the community and had high hopes for her. He often reminded her of the importance of staying focused on her studies and avoiding distractions, especially men like Ojo. But fate had other plans. One humid afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows on the dusty paths of Umuoma, Omarachi was walking home from school. She was clutching her books tightly, her neatly ironed uniform slightly damp with sweat. The path was quiet except for the chirping of birds and the distant hum of motorbikes. Suddenly, she heard a voice behind her. Ah, ah, who is this angel gracing our village roads? She turned to see Ojo, leaning casually against a tree, his signature smile in full display. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing a glimmering gold chain that caught the sunlight. "Good afternoon," she said politely, trying to walk past him. Wait now," Ojo said, stepping into her path. "Why are you in such a hurry? Are you running away from me?" Omarachi's heart raced. She had heard stories about Ojo and his ways, but standing this close to him, she couldn't help but notice how his eyes seemed to sparkle with mischief. "I'm going home," she replied, avoiding his gaze. "Going home?" he teased. "But the sun is too hot for a beautiful girl like you to walk under. Let me walk you home. Or better yet, come to my shop. I'll paint those pretty nails of yours for free." Omarachi laughed nervously, her cheeks flushing. "No, thank you. I'm fine." But Ojo was persistent. He walked beside her, cracking jokes and telling her how special she was. By the time they reached her father's compound, Omarachi found herself laughing more than she'd intended. Ojo's charm was intoxicating, and for the first time, she understood why so many women fell for him. From that day on, Ojo made it a point to bump into Omarachi on her way home. At first, she resisted his advances, reminding herself of her father's warnings. But Ojo was patient and persistent, showering her with compliments, small gifts, and promises of love. Despite her upbringing and better judgment, Omarachi eventually succumbed to his charm. Their secret meetings became frequent, and before long, Omarachi discovered she was pregnant. The news hit her like a thunderbolt. She was terrified, knowing how her strict father would react. With trembling hands, she confided in Ojo, hoping he would stand by her. "Pregnant?" Ojo said, his expression shifting. "Are you sure it's mine?" Omarachi's heart sank. "What do you mean? You're the only one." Ojo shook his head. "Omarachi, you know I care about you, but I can't take responsibility for this. I have my own problems." Tears streamed down her face as Ojo's words shattered her world. "You promised you loved me," she said, her voice breaking. But Ojo simply shrugged and walked away, leaving her standing alone in the middle of the road. Ebere was Omarachi's schoolmate. She had always been envious of Omarachi. During Ojo and Omarachi's confrontation, she accidentally eavesdropped and heard everything. This news was her opportunity to get back at Omarachi for taking her crush, Ojo. She went and reported her to the school administration. Omarachi was summoned and questioned about the rumors. Cornered, she had no choice but to accept her fate. The school administrator gave her an expulsion letter and sent her out of school. Embarrassed and confused, Omarachi took her belongings and headed home. When Omarachi's father found out, His fury knew no bounds. Deacon Obinna called her a disgrace to the family and chased her out of the house. With nowhere to go, Amarachi wandered the village, her growing belly drawing whispers and judgmental glances from neighbors. She now a school dropout and homeless, her dreams of becoming a teacher now a distant memory. The once cheerful Amarachi became a shadow of herself. Her friends avoided her, and children pointed at her swollen belly and laughed. Every day was a struggle, filled with regret and shame. Meanwhile, Ojo carried on with his life as if nothing had happened, his shop still bustling with women who adored him. One day, as she sat under a tree, confused and feeling lost, an old window approached her. "What bothers your feeble mind, my child?" she asked. Amarachi began to sob uncontrollably, as though the tears were just flowing freely from a tap within. "Good afternoon, Mama," Amarachi greeted. The old woman, realizing that something was terribly wrong, sat next to Amarachi and began to rub her back, hoping to calm her down. "I'm so sorry, my child. Whatever it is, just know that every problem has a solution," said the old woman. "I've reached my end, Ma. My life is finished." Amarachi spoke with a cracking voice as she continued crying. "Sesh! Hush, my child. Don't say that about yourself. Believe in God to make things right, and so shall it be." When she had finally calmed down, the old woman asked her if she had eaten, and Amarachi answered no. The old woman took her to her place, offered her some food and water, then they began talking. Amarachi told her everything, holding nothing back. The old woman resonated well with her story, as she once was in the same situation during her youthful years. She offered to take Amarachi to her parents' house and beg on her behalf, but Amarachi declined. With that, the old woman took her in and ensured she was comfortable. Amarachi's mom learned about it, and from time to time, she would visit them with foodstuffs and money for their upkeep. Humid morning. Nkechi, a frequent customer of Ojo's nail parlor, arrived for her usual manicure. Nkechi was married to Obiora, an army man often away on duty. With 2 children at home and her husband absent most of the time, Nkechi's loneliness had driven her to seek solace in Ojo's company. Their relationship began with innocent flirtation but quickly escalated into a full-blown affair. Ojo and Nkechi's escapades were the stuff of scandalous whispers. They met in secret at her home whenever Obiora was away. Sometimes they'd sneak off to the nearby riverbank, other times to a secluded lodge on the outskirts of the village. Nkechi, enamored by her Ogo's charm, risked everything for their forbidden romance. She often brought him gifts and even lent him money, fueling his reckless lifestyle. But their luck ran out one fateful afternoon. Obiora returned home unexpectedly, eager to surprise his wife. As he entered their compound, he noticed the unusual silence. Suspicious, he crept toward their bedroom and flung the door open. The sight before him sent him into a blind rage. Nkechi and Ojo, locked in a passionate embrace on their marital bed. Obiora's roar shook the house. "Nkechi! What is the meaning of this?" Nkechi screamed, scrambling for cover, while Ojo jumped out of bed, fumbling for his clothes. Obiora lunged at him, fists flying. Ojo managed to escape through the window, leaving behind a trail of torn clothing and bruises. The scandal spread like wildfire. Nkechi's marriage crumbled, and Obiora, humiliated, sent her packing. Other women who had secretly been involved with Ojo began to confess their regrets, their lives shattered by his empty promises and deceit. Some of them were already pregnant. Others chased from their husband's house. Some men in the village began to plot on how they would teach Ojo a lesson for ruining their relationships. Fearing for his life, Ojo fled to Lagos. But the city offered no sanctuary. His insatiable appetite for women and disregard for consequences. He seduced wives, girlfriends, and even daughters, leaving heartbreak and chaos in his wake. One of his conquests, Iyemi, was unlike the others. A young girl from a traditional family, she warned Ojo about her people's strict customs and the consequences of dishonor. She made it clear she sought marriage, not games. Despite her warnings, Ojo continued his philandering ways. Iyemi, blinded by love, fought off his numerous lovers on several occasions, believing she could change him to be a better man. Her last desperate attempt was to get pregnant, hoping it would force Ojo to commit. But when she told him the news, he denied responsibility, dismissing her as just another conquest. Iyemi's parents were dead, and her elderly grandfather, who had raised her, questioned Ojo about the situation on phone. Ojo, as expected, vehemently denied. A few weeks later, the village elders summoned him, but even before them, he denied the pregnancy. His friend Ayo, who was well accustomed with the traditions, warned him about the dangers of ignoring traditional customs. But Ojo laughed it off, claiming he'd escaped similar situations before. "She's not my first, and she won't be my last," he said arrogantly. The elders, however, had ominously told him, "We have our ways of finding the truth." Ojo dismissed their words as idle threats, went back to the city and continued with life as if nothing had happened. Months passed, and Ojo's carefree life took a bizarre turn. His stomach had begun to swell. At first, he brushed off his friends' teasing, attributing it to weight gain. But as his belly grew heavier, accompanied by nausea and fatigue, he became alarmed. He visited a hospital, where a scan revealed his stomach was filled with an abnormal amount of fluid. Doctors drained it, but the swelling returned almost immediately. Dr. Stan, one of the physicians, advised him to seek traditional help. Desperate, Ojo visited herbalists and witch doctors, spending his savings on remedies that offered no relief. His nights were plagued by nightmares of Iyemi's grandfather and the elders, their voices echoing with warnings he had ignored. One night, a native doctor revealed the truth. Iyemi and her grandfather had cursed him. "As her pregnancy grows, so will your stomach. The pain you caused her will return to you," the doctor said. Panicked, Ojo traveled back to Iyemi's village, but her compound was deserted. Her grandfather had passed away, and no one knew her whereabouts. The elders confirmed that only the one who cast the curse could lift it. Broken and terrified, Ojo returned to Lagos, a shadow of his former self. Ojo could no longer go to work due to his unusual condition. Broke and broken, he stayed in the bedside his one-bedroom apartment, often asking for handouts from friends to feed. As Iyemi's due date approached, Ojo's condition worsened. His swollen stomach became unbearable, and he could barely walk. The night Iyemi went into labor, Ojo's stomach busted open, ending his life in agony. Living alone in his small apartment, his death went unnoticed until neighbors were drawn by the foul stench emanating from his house. Police came and took the body to the morgue. Ojo's funeral was a spectacle. As his coffin was lowered into the ground, several women arrived, each clutching children who bore an uncanny resemblance to him. The villagers whispered among themselves, counting the number of children and shaking their heads in disbelief. One of Ojo's childhood friends, Chike, stood at a distance, his eyes fixed on a young woman standing alone with a small girl away from the crowd. It was Omarachi. Her beauty, though subdued by years of hardship, still shone through. Her daughter Ada was also a beautiful young girl with a beautiful smile, just like her dad Ojo. Chike approached her after the burial. "I'm sorry for all you've been through," he said, his voice gentle. Omarachi looked up, surprised by his kindness. Chike had always admired her from afar, and now, seeing her again, his heart swelled with the desire to protect her. Their meeting marked the beginning of a new chapter. Omarachi, weary of her past, found solace in Chike's sincerity. Slowly, she began to heal, finding hope and love in a man who valued her for who she was, not what she had endured. Within months, Chike and Omarachi got married in a small yet beautiful wedding. Their wedding was the talk in the village, everyone praising Omarachi for her resilience. The villagers too learned from Ojo's tragic tale, embracing the importance of accountability, respect, and the consequences of their actions. In the end, Ojo's story became a cautionary tale, a reminder that charm and deceit could only carry one so far before the weight of one's actions came crashing down. Hope you liked my story. Please share so that other people can enjoy and learn from this story too. Thank you, and see you in the next one.